really know until you look deeper or actually have tried it, and
Yeah,
then
you
you will
can't count
discover
for it.
this underlying component in it.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, I really enjoy your interpretation here because I have to say that I have not conceived of it as such. There is this.
Of course, you have. You've created it.
Well, but that's the thing. We don't know everything. We shouldn't know everything, and we should not. Curiosity can kill the cat. But I think that what we're dealing with today is something so serious and so grave that I don't think there's enough art about food, because what we're dealing here is a poisoning on a global level, and we're dealing with a poisoning on a global level that we have all accepted and said that we it's fine for us to be exposed to that, and I think that's so utterly bizarre.
I also would like to add, though, that we do have the economical and political side of this as well, because we're not going to solve this today and we're not going to bring all the solutions to this issue, but there is a huge issue that organic food is more expensive than non-organic food. It is such a commitment for a family to afford and even put the energy into acquiring and making sure that you know all of these things. Like, we have governments that should in theory be there to sort of take care of these things. It shouldn't be up to every family to be their own experts whether or not things the food that is being presented to them is something you can eat or not.
I think that's very interesting because now you're talking about the level of governance and the not the well, the silent contract that one makes with one's own government and state and the global forces. But that's a bit of a different topic. But what I'm fascinated with is that we're the only species that has managed to poison their own drinking water. I mean, there is no point of return. Like, I don't think that most people actually understand what does it mean to introduce microplastic to water. That means that build up of it within the cardiovascular system and the lymphatic system, so the system that essentially is responsible for allowing for processing of information within your own body, and that brings nutrients to the mind and takes away the and detoxifies, so takes away the
Waste product.
waste products. Thank you. Oh my god, you're reading my mind. I love that. Waste products is hindered to function optimally, and not just hindered, it's completely obstructed and will continue to be obstructed. So this suddenly you will have we'll probably be looking at a rise in a lot of interesting diseases that we did not think.
I don't think you will be stepping too much out of bounds if you say that probably a lot of the diseases that we've already experiencing is a
Yeah.
direct result of this.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, most definitely. But I'm also thinking about like heart attacks. Uh,
Which has been on a rise.
yeah, exactly. Cardiovascular clogs and a lot of different things that I, I mean, we have introduced for you, and then like the reaction on foreign bodies within your own body. I mean, that's a whole dimension there to unpack, because how how we deal with food is one of the most interesting dimensions that runs parallel to our own apprehension of value and of human life, and not only human life within the scope of what other people perceive as a value of a life, but also how we treat our bodies is very closely related to how we perceive our own worth. And food is very difficult. Like, it's a very difficult topic. And I was thinking about the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, where you have this generational dimension where the mother is also well, you have the donut obviously, and then you have the mother that is being quite critical about her daughter's weight. And I was thinking about that because obviously that situation is quite familiar to me, but I understand both the mother and the girl, because in today's world we have been brought up on highly processed food. For example, in Serbia, it was around the 80s. So when Coca-Cola became big there, it was a status thing. Like you were considered quite wealthy if you could afford that every single day, and
Um,
we were quite fine off. So that was something that was always present, and in the context of a lot of like Serbian cuisine being quite heavy on dough, on cheese, on curd meats, like on all of these things that are quite fatty. But then in the context of constant introduction to sodas, like my body early enough was not able to process on any.
it creates a
Yeah,
concoction that doesn't build up a healthy metabolic system and a healthy human body by having the constant exposure to these very bad reactors put together.
exactly. So you kind of have that you don't know. Like a lot of girls that have bodily issues in that direction of kind of being larger than they're comfortable with, don't even understand what's happening because they are doing a lot of right things now, but they actually do not have like. I don't think that if I didn't do the whole medical medium cleanse, I don't think that I would have myself understood how hindered our metabolism has become through the substances that we have introduced to our bodies through means of food. And it's a like it is a regulated field, but we know that as with everything, like just kind of looking at oxycontin and how that kind of went, that not that it took, or lead poisoning, that's also a topic that we can discuss of.
I think the biggest things that is lead is definitely a big one, but I think we're all fairly familiar right now with at least how the smoking campaign was and how many years it actually took to just get to the place where you can legally put on a package of cigarettes that this is actually harmful to you. Because the tobacco industries bought scientists, they put out this information, and this is this is all known now, and if we are that naive that we think this only happens in the tobacco industry, that this isn't a common tactic within a lot of industries, then we are having a bit of a naive approach to it. So we cannot really trust the system of governance when it comes to these things, unfortunately. Because as you said with lead as well, I can't remember how many parts it is, but for a long time it was said to be like a safe limit. You could be exposed to this tiny amount of lead. So it could be some tiny amounts in drinking water and other things. And now they're starting to realize that it's something that the human body should just never have.
Yeah, I mean, lead is hyper poisonous, but also we can address this dimension where it took 25 years, despite all the evidence, to start.
You're talking about the removal of lead from petrol now, that the thin layer around the earth of that came from lead being used in petrol for a 25 to 30 year period, and they had to
Yeah,
fight
but
it for that long time before they actually got rid of it.
yes, but for example, like do you remember that there was a Norwegian kindergarten that needed to be moved because they found lead in the soil?
No, it's not uncommon in
Yeah.
any place that if for children who play outside, there is this layer from I'm not fully sure about this, but 70s, 80s, that layer of earth that is there has lead in it.
And
Because the entire atmosphere on Earth was full of lead due to all the cars that had it in their petrol.
petrol, exactly. So we were speaking. We were like, as you said it very well. I think for a very long time, we the governance has been executed by higher organs that society has allowed, has delegated some credence to. And you kind of come around, and with the social media and everything, like uh, you understand that we can't be naive anymore. We literally cannot be naive, because what is apparent is that there very obviously there are individuals that are fighting for the world that should be, but most of the governing organs do not have your best interest.
Well,
They don't.
We can say that, but it's also not the most effective way to regulate it, because a government agency is never the quickest. You never have a quick and swift result unless something is of a very grave severity. And we can always say that this is, but the issue with food is that it takes time.
Yeah.
And you can always come up with some. It's very easy to also pick apart a study that is done, because it is so hard to isolate and actually come down to the sources. So you could always say that not enough research and resources are put into coming up with actually clean and redundant studies that aren't done by someone who already have that isn't being paid for,
Yeah,
but
like
someone
vested
who have an
interest.
interest in the study, and where we can actually get some results that we can trust, because it's fairly clear as well, without going too much out of topic, that the food model that came from the US in the after war years is completely based on what production had been ramped up throughout the war, and that was just made so they could sell American products.
Yeah,
And
and
the
here,
entire world has been using that food models for the next 40 to 50
yeah,
years.
and here comes kind of the thing. Like we're fighting, we're fighting. Um, there is a lot of substances that are illegal because of the adversary effects they have on the human mind and the body, especially in the context of dependency and how do you call that? Oh my god, my mind went blank a bit. Um,
I'm not sure, but that again
like
is
the different word for depend addicted,
uh,
addiction. So in the context of addiction, but the way food functions, especially highly processed food, is that they are hyper poisonous and they're hyper addictive, and they create this very strong emotional bond where we can't actually talk about food because we can't talk about the human body. The human body is only to be talked through certain ways and channels, which are contingent upon the subjective individual apprehension of their own narrative. And I mean, for everyone here included, myself, even you, and I would say even you, because you're the only, like, you're one of those few people that one knows that have very strong reaction to a lot of substances that you would, they're harmful for the body. So you would never, you never like dairy. You have a difficult relationship. I mean, you don't have difficult relationship. That's, you have funny relationship with fat on ham once upon a time when we used to eat meat. But
yeah, you could say I don't enjoy fat in general. Like olive oil is fine, but that's as far as I will go.
yeah, but I mean, you would cut out with surgical precision the small fat pieces around the ham. Like you would not touch any of that. You also don't like sugar. You like some baked things, but you don't enjoy chocolate. You don't enjoy ice cream. Like all of those things that are hyper addictive for the human mind and are harmful for both the mind and body. You don't have that. You don't have that addictive relationship to that. So I think that's very fascinating for me because I've grown up in an environment where, and also food is very difficult. For example, like you and me have such a different upbringing within those two contexts because in Serbia the relationship with food is a very inflamed thing. And I was recently there for a funeral, and my veganism has definitely been discussed, and people have tried to push a lot of meat on me, which
Which is
becomes.
interesting in this day and age, since veganism has really broken through some boundaries.
But it's not all. It's not about that. It's about the like the respect for the personal choices. So in Serbia, food culture has been very highly developed, and it's looked upon as a token of love, whether you want it or not. So you're constantly ushered into eating and eating and eating because every rejection of food, especially if you are coming to visit, is hurtful act that is.
It is seen as disrespectful towards the host, or that the host isn't seen as adequate if you aren't enjoying what they are putting forth, right?
Yeah, I mean, but if it's disrespect, that would be one thing, but it becomes this hyper personal and again hyper inflammated question where it's not only the rejection of whatever it is, it's the rejection of pure love. So I've, for example, been brought up in a family where not eating when things are served to you is it's a minefield. While
Yes, and
you have not, like you've grown up in an environment. Norway, I'm sorry, Norway does not press food on you. People have their own opinions and people can discuss, but nothing of the sorts that I've experienced.
it isn't as deeply ingrained. It is based on other things. It is more based on the investment that has been done in the food through making it and through purchasing it more than anything else. Like that, there's no wish to waste it.
Yeah.
But I would say that that doesn't normally mean that you should overeat, but you need to plan out what you put on your plate in a way. But
Yeah, but also like when we came to Norway, I remember like we were just very surprised and shocked about how much vegetables you were eating, and you were drinking water, and you were eating porridge, and you were eating white bread. Like I grew up in a family, and again,
you meant grained bread.
grain bread. So like I grew up with drinking Coca-Cola, and like that's completely normal. And I grew up with eating white bread and a Nutella for breakfast. And understand, like it has taken so many years for me to reverse the effect all of those substances have had on my body, that it has literally costed me my life. And or or this is an attempt to kind of regain that control back. But we don't think enough about what we put in our body, how we put it in our body, and what does that mean in the context of not only a couple of years, but what does it mean in 20 years? The accumulative effect of all these substances is very, very dangerous. And I would actually even go so far that I think that on a global scale, there should be space to suing a lot of companies for both approving a lot of substances being put in the food, but also for not for lacking regulation within what is done, why it's done, it's how it's done. And I think the people, there should be a civil lawsuit against a lot of companies.
You're saying that companies should be held responsible for the irresponsible choices that they have taken in order to make products that they have made a lot on.
But you know, if there was if it was just blatant irresponsibility, I could have even accepted that, in the sense that
but it is
you can accept that people are negligent and then people are maybe not well informed. Like if somebody if somebody creates a food product that is edible in its essence, whatever that means, it does, and it's on the, and it is contained within dimensions of the recommendations that have been established within the respective age. Of course, nobody's going to think about like what are the long-term effects. Everybody thinks like, how can we monetize on this? But I think that's where exactly the place where we can't be naive. We don't have space anymore to be naive about what is happening and why it is happening. So one needs to have a high level of control of substances that one puts in in the body. But I do definitely think that a lot of these companies should be held accountable, because it's not that we didn't know. It's not that they didn't know. It is the fact that this has been perpetuated for the sake of profit. And I think a civil lawsuit against large food companies, especially the ones dealing with sodas and a lot of snack products, should happen quite about soon. Because what we're dealing with is a poisoning on a global level.
Like there's a lot of solutions that can be done with this. I personally think that there's a lot that has happened, and I think proper non-biased research is the way to go, and legislations based on that research. Very hard to set up since you basically need to have some people involved in this research where you control most factors. Not gonna go into that, but I think there's many directions that can be taken with this. We already know that there is certain combinations that is just pure unhealthy for humans and are made using addictive properties like refined sugar, caffeine, fat. Fat and sugar is a very good mixture that ticks off all the cravings in the brain. And I think it's not a lot to ask for governments to increase the, for instance, the taxation both on the companies and on the products, so that it's not only the producer, not only the end user that has to pay for it, because we do have sugar taxes around now, but that is just charging the end user in the end. I think also hitting the companies, and the profit for this should directly go into making organic food available for
Yeah.
everyone.
Yes, exactly. So like, so that's kind of, we're going back to Snickels. It's like, haha, Snickels, but it's a bit like, well, this is political, economical, and social issue. So let's speak about it, because
Saying it's here to start the conversation.
yes, and I mean, especially this dimension that I'm introducing through this podcast, or this short video series, is because all of these topics are loaded with things that I want to talk about. And I'm very, like, I'm just kind of a bit on a side note. Yeah, you know what, I can take this a bit differently, but I think that, again, before I've done this cleanse, which has kind of lasted for a year and a half, which starts with the celery juice in the morning, no foreign substances, a la sodas, no alcohol. I quit smoking. I mean, I started smoking when I was in London, so I didn't smoke for very long, but I quit smoking. No perfume, no acrylic nails. So all of that has kind of gone away, because as my body started to become sensitized to what is just pure normal food, and I have to say that you and me are lucky in the context that we can afford organic food almost completely. Like, we can afford completely organic food, but it is a big it's quite a large amount of money spent on just eating quite cleanly, and it's one of those things that not everybody can afford, and a large amount of people won't be able to afford it. As when you kind of are going towards the families of 4 or 5 people, eating only organic is a very expensive affair. And what we're kind of dealing with here is that I think, obviously, segregation according to the political, economical, and social classes always existed. That's not something new. But I think we're kind of reaching this segregation that reminds me of that French cartoon, Gondor. Was it Gondor? I'll find it and I'll put it in the podcast, where we're speaking about 2 different races. The one that has kind of had access to the clean environment, food, resources, and then the other ones that have been poisoned through different means. And obviously we are on the brink of this happening, because the organic food is a division, and it's a division of dimensions that we have not previously thought about. Because one of the reasons, like, there's a lot of things that I've already, one attributes to the temperament. So for example, like me coming from a South European country, I used to be quite exuberant and quite intense personality. However, after I've done the food cleanse, what has become quite apparent for me is that things such as sugar, coffee, they heat up blood system, they heat up the brain. So your ability to navigate situations in a calm, composed, and proficient manner decreases. You become much more overheated. You're much more prone to aggressive outbursts. You're much more prone to to these dimensionalities of behavior that do not be that, like, they can work within middle class, obviously, but as soon as you start kind of walking a higher road, they become hyper detrimental, because if you're not if you don't have ability to contain yourself, well, that's a problem. And if you have this need, if you constantly feel like your energy is lacking, you will end up eating much more, which will again affect your own apprehension of the self, and it will change a lot of parameters. So we're not speaking only, like, food is not only, oh, we should eat healthy, oh, we all know we should eat healthy. We are speaking about something which much larger set of repercussions than I think any of us are actually thinking about.
Yes, we are, and this is what Snickels is introducing. It's this very innocent, funny-looking piece with the first eye, but with a much deeper ties into a much more serious and topic that needs more attention and should be given more attention.
Yes, exactly, because, like, what we're speaking about is this division between what we're speaking is almost like a new racial division. Who can afford the clean products and the access to the clean environment, than as opposed to somebody who can't. And you have this, you have it's so much mental health that is connected to the food that we're not even aware of. And at the same time, our brains kind of are being prone to choosing foods with high sugar in high in sugar, is also a bit of an evolutionary hack that does not help us entirely. But I think that we need to be aware. We need to be aware that not everything is as it is on the surface. And I think that's what I also love about Snickels, because it's difficult to speak about food without people getting affected, because it directly relates to the body. And the body is, again, it's a evolutionary asset that today is treated in within the same scope as any other stock. We trade our bodies, we trade our aesthetics, we trade our looks. So it's very difficult to discuss this without kind of almost being preachy, which is not what this is about. But I think we do need to address that a lot of things are happening to us because we are not aware of what is happening with the bodies when they're exposed to different things. And you and me have not touched alcohol for a very long time. And I would not recommend that to anyone at all. Like, drinking once a month is fine, but drinking the amounts that I'm observing, like, it's just not evolutionary conducive. So I think that food is very difficult because of this bodily connection that we have, because we feel subjectively attacked as soon as our food habits are
Challenged.
scrutinized. That was the word I was looking for, scrutinized. And it doesn't mean that we shouldn't love our bodies. Like, I think one of the most wonderful changes that have happened post-COVID is that, like, this wave of bodily acceptance fueled by Instagram, by TikTok, by just general exposure to different types of bodies, and that a lot of people can be happy without being ultra skinny, especially for the I'm sorry, on the for the female part of the audience I'm speaking about. But and that's what I love about Snickels. It's not perfect. Like, you have this dimension of tracing and retracing, of mistakes made and then changed, but then everything done like directly on canvas, so you can see all of those dimensions and all of that information deposited. And it's a bit like with our bodies. And I think for people that have grown up in 90s, we have been put under very large pressure of how people are supposed to look. But I think I'm very happy that it's changing now. I just don't never want. I want to. Food is something that I will be speaking about frequently. Um, Out of a lot of dimensions, there was I was once like I was looking at the internet and it was a bit funny because it was a canned box of mangoes and it said on the box mangoes the highest the best source of vitamin A, and then you would turn around the can and it was like vitamin A 0%. We need to be aware. We need to be aware of the labels. We need to be aware of what's happening, and we need to be aware of what we're doing, because I don't think people need to be anorexic at all. Like, I don't think people need to be ultra skinny to be beautiful, but I think a healthy body and a healthy skin, I think that's what I love. One of those things that I really enjoy about Norway is that, like, when I was in Kristiansand couple of months ago, I was looking at people and they were not skinny, they weren't ultra skinny, they weren't like Western and Eastern fetishization of starved body. They were normal, healthy women between size small to large, kind of a given where how body is constructed, whose skin is absolutely glowing and the hair is gorgeous, and I find that so much more beautiful. So this is not about, like, this podcast is not about a rant against X, Y, and Z. It is actually a rant about the toxic products that we put on our body that kind of hinge our metabolism. Because if something hinges our metabolism and that affects our mood, that will affect every single dimension of the human behavior. And if you think about it, you're one person watching this or two people watching this. Within your respective compounds. I hope there is more than that, but it becomes very interesting to think about that the same behavior, similar thoughts, similar behavior is repeated or simulated. How many people is there on Earth now? 7 billion? More?
I think 6 point something.
Yeah. When all of the
Probably closing in on 7.
Yeah, when all of those people are doing quite similar choices, and you kind of see how that pans out in different dimensions, and I don't think it's looking very good for us. Just in general, within the evolutionary trajectory, and I think that's quite important to say.
I do agree. So it seems like you want some of the same freedom that has now been that people are enjoying in regards to body types, etc. You want sort of that same thing to happen within the food industry, where more the freedom for the consumer is there to not constantly have to be vigilant about what they eat and what is presented to them, but that there is a larger global focus on that the things being produced and the things being offered is of a healthier variety, where people can actually make choices or have good choices presented to them.
Exactly, because again, this is an issue that will not be tackled from the top down, but it has to be tackled down and upwards.
Unfortunately, it does seem like it, or that seems to have been what has been happening all the time, that it comes from down and up instead of actually being government starting to realize and make big changes.
Exactly. So yes, and there's a very interesting cross section between wealth and food here, because the higher in the hierarchy you come, especially on the female side, you kind of want to start to notice that women are really taking good care of themselves. That means eating a lot of porridge, a lot of grains, well, not a lot, but like ginger shots, etc., 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 juices. And I think there is a very interesting dimension where the food is not fancy anymore, but the food is supposed to be nutritional and healthy. And I think as long as the focus is put there, I think a lot of people would just come much better off by learning how to eat differently, even if it's not organic. But and then we can speak about like change, because how our minds and body reacts to what we put into it, it's nothing new for us, and yet we kind of repeat this hyper detrimental behavior over and over again that ends up biting the lowest social economical classes, or affects them hardest. And I think that's something that is really important to speak about and to address.
I do agree.
Yeah, and with that, I think we're concluding this episode. And thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. And let's speak another time.
Goodbye.
Bye.